And I see probably maybe a professor, or parent, or community member as well of City of Goshen. So thank you, and also same to those watching us on live. Thank you so much for taking the time. My name, just like Teresa said, my name is Daniel Zelaya. I am the plant manager for one of our four. So WasteAway Group is a parent company. Underneath it, there's a bunch of sister companies that entitle or make up our entire organization. I myself am the plant manager for our Murph plant, which is our recycling facility. I do see some familiar faces here of some that have come on tours on our facilities, I believe, and maybe there's some online watching that have toured our facility. Teresa has for sure, so she can definitely be a big advocate of what truly we do. So that's a little bit about myself. I am a Goshen College student, so I attended Goshen College back way long ago, it seems. So I actually 2011 to 2015 is why I graduated. So yeah, I mean, so it seems like it was forever ago that I was walking across this campus, but now coming back to my alma mater and I see you guys, it's definitely nostalgic. I mean, definitely feel like I've been here out of college for quite a few years. I'll turn it over to Kyle.
Yeah, so Kyle Woolsey, my title is Director of Sales. So I spend a lot of time communicating the value of recycling, trying to help customers, whether it be municipalities or our large industrial customers, or just every resident, to understand how to implement recycling in their facilities and their homes. And again, just trying to communicate the value of it, the importance of sustainability as a whole in recycling. So that's what I spend a lot of my time doing. And as Daniel said, so I wanted to spend a little bit of time right at the top of this, just giving you guys a quick overview of our company. So WasteAway Group is a holding company made up of a bunch of different entities. And I'll just tell you about the waste and recycling, hauling, and processing companies only. I won't spend time on the others. So Teresa mentioned board and WasteAway. So you might see board and WasteAway carts at your home. They look like this guy right here. We provide waste recycling at your curbside at your home. Heimco WasteAway is our commercial and industrial division, so we do the same thing, waste and recycling, hauling, and processing for businesses. We also have a company called Integra Certified Document Destruction, so we shred confidential documents at businesses and for residents as well. That shredded paper then gets recycled at Daniel's plant, Murph. And then we also have, so Recycling Works is the plant, or I should say the plants, the place where all this material from the hauling companies is brought, collected, processed, and then ultimately shipped off to its final destination to be then recirculated into the economy. And then finally, our newest recycling division is called Pinecone Recycling in Goshen. So I know some of you have toured Recycling Works. I would encourage you, if you have any interest, to learn about our post-industrial wood recycling business. It's in Elkhart on County Road 7, actually across from the county landfill. And the reason I'm excited to just mention that is because our Elkhart County is a very unique place. So our businesses create a ton, like I shouldn't say that, tons, many tons of scrap wood. And if we didn't take action and other businesses take action, that would all end up in the landfill, because it's not just your normal. So, sorry, I went long on that, but please carry on. That's the infrastructure of our business.
Yep. So pretty much, so my colleague Kyle pretty much explained a little bit of overview of what our businesses that are related to picking up, whether it's a recycling stream at your curbside, which you see the curbside trucks. Maybe you've seen them boarding trucks picking up curbside bins, and then also Heimco, which is our commercial and industrial entity. All those, once they come to my plant, which is Recycling Works, that is exactly where all that single stream material that you put out there in the bins, whether it's those household bins that you have, or also we do quite a bit of our organization works with municipalities, etc. Not only in Elkhart County, but also we extend about a 100-mile radius around our home base. So we work alongside in municipalities in Columbia City, Warsaw, and we're trying to branch out more, so that way we're able to capture a lot more of our backyard. Not only is our backyard Elkhart County, but we also want local counties to come in and bring their single stream material to an exciting place as Recycling Works. So a little overview of Recycling Works. So our Murph consists of quite a bit of collaboration between human labor. So we got our team members, which we have about 77 of them, They range from machine operators. So we got very, very experienced front loaders, bobcat operators, forklift drivers, and also baler operators. And then we also have what's the normal production workers. So we got what they're referred to as in the industry pickers. So we got our team members that are sitting conveyor belts, picking material that is destined to either be removed from the stream or separated and processed. Whether it all determines what conveyor belt they're in what section of our Murph they're standing in. So that's a little bit overview of my plant up north. We also got a recycling works facility down south, which is RW Compostable. That is actually a facility that, if I'm not mistaken, Kyle opened up no more than a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Through an acquisition about 6
Yes,
years ago.
through an acquisition for about 6 years ago. And in that facility, there is not any processing equipment. So there's no AI robots, there's no optic guys, there's none of that fancy tech that Teresa, and I'm going to encourage a lot of you and our mayor also come to visit recycling works and see exactly how we're processing our material. RW South pretty much is almost a hub to bring recycling material, single stream from that local Kokomo community. They bale it, compact it, and then it gets shipped up to us, to RW North, where we go ahead and process it and run it through our machine and extract and process everything from your tin, aluminum, glass, paper, cardboard, etc.
And just to add on to what Daniel's saying, so we want to give you guys an overview, like total economic picture of recycling. So Daniel sort of explained some of the costs, and I know you're going to go into some more of the costs here in a little bit, but we're going to first tell you about the cost of recycling. So, because a lot of people don't think about, they think about everything like an aluminum can, it has value, right? So, geez, why wouldn't whoever generated it get some sort of credit back to the house for this stuff? What we're trying to explain is, there's a big picture here. It's everything from hauling the stuff to processing it to shipping it to its end destination, and then there's value. So if you want to continue on with the cost of recycling and then get into the value, that'd be great.
Yep, of course. So once single stream enters our facility, the first cost to operate a Murph is pretty much scaling in our inbound trucks. So a scale is essential to a Murph business, just because a scale, we need to determine how much weight is coming in, including the weight of the truck, material inside. Once they tip in our floor, they exit out, then we get that net weight between full and empty, and that's the amount of net material that's being brought in into our facility. So the first cost for recycling works, or if any of you, fine gentlemen or ladies, want to open up your own Murph plant, you gotta invest about $100,000 just in a scale. Just an industrial size scale to weigh trucks, big freight trucks, cost about $100K, including the scale itself, the software, and that's not even getting to the two front ladies that have a front in the scale house, which pretty much are the first pit stop for our trucks. So now we get into staffing costs to pretty keep that place going. So once the material is scaled in, tipped on our floor, then that's when we also got costs associated with obviously staffing, 77 employees. We gotta be incentivized heavy machinery operators to come work for us to be able to start our processing for that single stream, which is introducing it into our system. So between inbound and by the time it gets tipped on the floor, there's a lot of costs associated with that before even the material gets into or placed into our metering bin, which is where the process starts for our Murph.
And so other costs associated with the operation. So, you know, we've got trucking, which gets it there. We've got processing. Then once you get into our system, a lot of people don't understand that. I'll give an example quick. So hoses, plastic bags, these types of things that aren't meant to end up in our recycling. They cause friction in our systems, which can ultimately cause fires. They cause maintenance downtime. Those are some things that we wrestle with, and we need your guys' help, you know, to understand that bag recycling is a no-no. We have a list here that can educate you if needed, but bag recycling is a no-no. Cords, anything that can get wrapped around something. I mean, those are things that we want to avoid, and obviously just normal waste, right? Because that ends up in the waste compactor at the end of the whole process. But those are some of the costs. Additionally, though, I just wanted to mention that, you know, you battle with some fuel costs, you battle with some driver wages, and then maintenance. And those are some of the, I think that well enough explains the costs, the headwinds against recycling. Now, I think this would be the time to transition into the value, correct? The value of recycling, the fun part to talk about, right? That's what everyone wants to hear about. So, if you wanted to,
so just like
it's done.
So just how Kyle was saying, so yeah, of course, you've heard, you've probably seen, and maybe have family members. How many of you here have family members that live in bigger cities? For example, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, etc. And I'm sure that those bigger cities, you have seen that actually, for example, I got an uncle who lives in New York. They encourage residents, and there's a lot of residents, New Yorkers, that go out and their almost full-time job is to go from place of business in the street, alley to alleyway, picking up aluminum cans, picking up tin, picking up pretty much anything that has a value. Because currently in the market, if you want to make an easy $2,500, you gotta come up with a ton of aluminum cans if you want to get paid $2,500. So now you may say, okay, how many aluminum cans do you guys or myself, if I want to make that a hustle or even like a full-time job per se, you know, how can I go out and make, you know, a nice easy $2,500? Well, you have to collect north of 30,000 cans to just make 1 ton, because that is it. And because that is what the market is paying right now if you want to collect the aluminum. So yeah, of course, there is value in what you're throwing away. So that's why if we go ahead and say, you know what, why don't we, you know, say for example, people throw their single stream to the waste bin and it gets to the landfill. Why do places like Recycling Works exist? It's because, yeah, of course, we are a for-profit business, but once again, we do collaborate with the environment when it comes to, hey, that aluminum can is not going to deteriorate in our lifetime. It's not going to go away in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You know, so why not create jobs using material that we're disposing of? And that's exactly what Recycling Works fundamentally is. We provide jobs for the local economy, both Goshen, Elkhart. We got team members that come in and work from different cities around South Bend, Chihuahua, etc. So not only does the value of those single stream have value, it also creates, it allows people to, you know, purchase homes. It provides people to provide for their families. So there's a lot of value that comes from collecting and bringing all that single stream to our facility. So just like I was talking about the aluminum bales, you know, a big commodity out there is also, can anybody tell me besides aluminum, what's the number one thing that you guys probably see on a day-to-day basis that's either recycled or you may see it also in waste bins? Exactly. So how many of you here are avid Amazon shoppers? Do you guys receive Amazon? I got a sister and also my fiance. I see a box of Amazon coming almost on a daily basis. I've seen up to multiple times a day. So
starts with reduce, you guys. It starts with reduce, not recycle. So maybe less Amazon shipments would be the first thing. But okay.
So once again, it's like, okay, we got all this OCC, all this cardboard. So what do we do with it? Of course, you know, the consumer can go ahead and collect it and get value out of it. But once again, the market currently is paying, if you guys want to hear a figure, $160 per ton. So imagine how much cardboard you actually have to accumulate. You have to bale, somehow get it stuck together to form 1 ton. You know, so that is where the value of recycling really comes and why recycling works really exists. We've invested a lot of capital in our infrastructure to be able to take in large volumes, large capacity of single stream into our facility. Recycling Works underwent, if I'm not mistaken, Kyle, north of $2.5 million renovation this past fall of 2021. That includes everything from state-of-the-art robots, optic guys that are trained to read specific material. That's why I would encourage you to come out to our facility and really see it in person, because you'll be amazed how fast these machines, and Teresa can be a testament to that, how fast the machines can read the material coming in and pick it at a very quick rate. So that's why not only with the capital expenditure, that allows us to be able to process material a lot faster, and also obviously have the space and capacity to bring in more value. Because at the end, that's what we want. We want more material coming into us and avoid going to the landfill, where obviously it's going to take years and years and years, and there's no economic stimulation that happens with sending material to the landfill. When it comes to Murph plants across us or other ones spread across the U.S., it's creating livelihood for many people, for many team members that work at those facilities.
Yeah, the economic impact, your modesty, you probably wouldn't include this in your presentation, but when we did this Murph retrofit, it added capacity, it made us more efficient. So Daniel, and I'm going to paraphrase the story here, but Daniel decided, okay, well, now we've got essentially 20% more capacity in labor hours. Well, that means that the guys that were working 5 days a week, 10 or so hours a day, now are working 4. He's like, well, that's not very good. These guys, I mean, we're basically just chopping off hours. How can we put these people to work? And it's almost counterintuitive. It's like, yes, this new system should reduce labor hours. But what Daniel does is like, well, what if we reprocess? So the stuff that's going through our system that the optic guy missed the first time, stuff that that our system wasn't catching, the sorters weren't catching and picking. What if we reran that waste that's exiting the facility and see how much more recyclables we could recover? And just as a round number, so we were sending 5 compactor boxes a day of residue out of our facility. Now there is still a lot of trash that comes into our recycling plant that we can't recycle. But Daniel's project, it did 2 things. Number one, economically, it kept those people employed for that extra day per week. Additionally, it reduced our total number of trash compactors from 5 to 1. So like, that's how much we were able to reduce the miscellaneous items that were leaving the facility. And so I don't know, it was just a cool economic impact factor that the project had, but also Daniel worked on. So.
Right, because also, I mean, every single can, if you think about it this way, every single aluminum can, every single cardboard box, every single glass bottle that you throw away, not in your recycling bin, but also in your waste bin, is taken away from my ability as plant manager to really provide livelihood to my employees. Because recycling works owned by the Hines family could definitely go completely automated. There's a lot of Murph plants out there that can't find or can't bring enough volume to pay sorters, to pay operators to be on staff, so they opt for the automated version. They bring pretty much every single team member's place, or every single human hand that is in our facility is replaced by a robot, whether it's a vacuum system, whether it's an actual extension of a robot picking material that's trained to do. But no, that's why it's very important and crucial for our community to provide. And as Kyle was saying, in that project, I found myself, the machine was running very efficient. So what do? I didn't want to reduce the hours my employees cost. Pretty much their livelihood was being torn by a day of not working. So what do? I challenge my team, challenge my men to find a way to, we're losing, sending too much residue, whether it's good or even capturing bad and sending it to the appropriate place. Well, why don't we recirculate the material? And we were able to reduce not only our trash being sent to a landfill by a good 90%, but we went from 5 compactor boxes down to 1, and each compactor box weighs about 10 tons. So if you times that times a week, times a year, I mean, that is significant tonnage that's not being sent to our landfill, but it's being kept on site, paying our employees, providing jobs, livelihood for our guys. So that's what the value of recycling truly is. Not only are we taking away from the landfill, we're providing jobs, stimulating growth in our community. And that's something that also Kyle wanted to talk a bit more about.
Yeah, no, I got to go back to one thing you just said. So if I'm listening in the crowd, I'm thinking, good grief, that's a lot of like trash. So I'm recycling this stuff and it's ending up in the landfill. So let me make a quick clarifying point. Traditional Murph residue or like waste that exits the facilities around 10%. Okay. We were on par with the average Murph, meaning that like it's not like our sorting equipment wasn't working like other Murphs would. It's just the acceptable average. The 10% residue, most of that residue is trash, but there's still some. There's still that fraction. Sounds little, it's 2 or 3%, but it sounds little. But what we did was, I believe that many companies, if they didn't have the right leadership, would say, cut the labor, cut the cost. Like, let's just make more dollars today and ignore the fact that, oh, wait a minute, keep the labor, recycle more. So it was a cool thing. I guess the other thing I would add to you guys is, just to put it into context, 535 tons a week is what our plants are processing. So to put that into perspective, that's 6,081 tons was processed of single stream in January of this year. So 6,081 tons, compare that to, Dana was comparing it to some municipalities like Seattle, for example. Our 6,000 tons compared to Seattle's 5,000 tons. Salt Lake City's 585 tons compared to our 6,000 tons. So we're aggregating a lot of material from surrounding areas and bringing it in. What does that convert to? Well, 535 tons per, let me get my notes real quick. 535 tons per day is 4,500 barrels of oil, okay? So today oil's up a little bit, right? Like 130 bucks a barrel. So from an economic standpoint, that's $585,000 of, if you're following me here, of oil saved if you convert your single stream to oil resource reduction. I didn't know if you wanted to go over some of these other highlights. It was kind of an interesting conversion. If you guys have ever seen this, where you convert tons to resources saved. But.
Yeah, and to add on to what Kyle said, there is, for example, all the figures, all the facts that I'm going to state is going to be very related to our community, very related to the mill race, to Shanklin Park, to Abstract Park, all these lovely parks in which, because I ran track and ran cross country here at Goshen College, I ran across all these parks. So when I really find out exactly how much value that really has, besides the monetary value, just the value that we're bringing back and preventing deforestation in itself is great. We have 2 plants to process material at Recycling Works. One plant has all the fancy equipment that's where you would take in all the single stream that's mixed. Our other plant takes in only clean, for example, our plant 1, what we refer to, only takes in clean cardboard in. Just in that plant, we process the number that Kyle said, 535 tons of cardboard in that day, in that week. What does that mean for Goshen? If we put it into context, that's about 17,000 trees, virgin trees, that we're preventing from being cut down on a weekly basis. If we translate that to our lovely city of Goshen, that is, according to the Administration of Agriculture, there's 1 tree planted every quarter of a fifth of an acre. That's about a Shanklin Park worth of trees that Recycling Works is saving from being deforested by the amount of cardboard that we're processing and shipping out and being sold to mills, which is the end user. Paper mills, which break it down and convert it back into reusable, recyclable Amazon boxes, Target, paper, etc. So that's why it's very important, not only us as leaders of the community and the waste and recycling industry, to state this awesome facts. It's gonna be like, you know what, if we did this, we can save X amount of barrels of oil, like my colleague said, etc. A lot of times it's good to place those figures to our local community, to where we live. And I think that by saving 17,000 virgin trees from being cut down, that is immense. Because if you guys know, this 1 virgin tree only makes about 151 virgin boxes, corrugated boxes. So where does the rest of that material go? I mean, it's waste. So by recycling and adding value to that commodity and bringing it and recycling appropriately and providing, and our county is providing contracted recycling programs for our community members. It's very important because it costs a lot less to recycle for our community than it does to send it to the landfill. And I know that the opposition may say it's a lot cheaper to send it to a landfill than it is to send it to a recycling facility. That is completely false. They must get their facts right before they make such remarks. Because it's very important to inform using actual facts based on actual numbers that I see, that my team sees on a weekly basis at our facility.
Before we wrap up and take questions, I want to let you guys know that Daniel and I are available to you all as a resource. You guys are taking the time to be here to listen because you're advocates for sustainability in your community. So we want to give you guys facts and help you, help encourage you guys, but also educate if we can, providing real life information. And we don't have the time to go into it today, but just as a quick example, like in Elkhart County, we've reduced some recycling efforts in recent months due to economic factors, right? Because the cost of it didn't make sense for budgetary purposes, but that's just from one perspective, budget. It's not taking into account what did that do from a resource utilization standpoint? Like how many resources did we lose? Finite resources did we lose when we reduced that access to recycling? And those are the types of things as community leaders, influencers in your community that we would love to share that information with you. That way you're educated and can advocate for what you think is best from a sustainability standpoint. But we just appreciate you guys taking the time to listen. And I think if you're up to it, I think we can just open it up for questions now.
Yeah. Okay.
I have two things.
Yes.
Really good talk.
Thank you.
So obviously aluminum, plastic, and cardboard is a big volume for you guys. What do you guys do with the plastics, like 1 through 4, 1 through 7 that you get?
So everything has a market. Your traditional, for example, your traditional 2s and 3s are like your HDPE, which is like your milk jugs. We got your mixed detergent plastic jugs in there as well. All those have a market, an end user that pretty much recycles, buys our bales, recycles, and remix brand new products out of it. Whether it's the same milk jug that gets sold to a different vendor, to a dairy farm, whether it's some type of other plastic exclusion that gets sold. Currently, we also taken into answer your question, some vinyl siding into one of our plants, and that vinyl siding is being transported to a facility out in Chicago where they are breaking it down to its bare minerals, and they're making weather stripping out of it. So there's just Recycling Works efforts are to always find an outlet for every single thing, commodity that comes into our place, whether it is something that we want or something that is not.
For those, if who else listening here, the question was, what are we doing with all numbers of plastics, 1 through 7? And I think, just adding to Daniel, so 1s and 2s are traditionally easy to recycle. One thing I would add is there's a facility called Brightmark Energy in Ashley, Indiana. They're converting the hard to recycle plastics into alternative fuels. That is really, so there's a lot of very difficult to recycle plastics where there's not always a market for it. Despite our best efforts, there's nowhere to take it. Well, we've been baling and bunkering a tremendous amount of these 3s through 7s because this facility, when it is finally fully operational, because we have shipped to the facility, it's just they've been up and down as they're trying to fire up. But the point is, that's going to be a great resource to us, like in the Midwest, because there are a lot of, like Murph film, for example, these plastic bags that we aren't supposed to take in, but we get anyway and end up in a bale. Like those from time to time don't have a market. The plastics recyclers are saying, no, we've got enough of the good stuff. We don't need that stuff, more or less. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the second part of my question is styrofoam. We use styrofoam on campus recycling. I think the facility that you're talking about is maybe the styrofoam tricycle recycling is using that to melt down their styrofoam as well. I think they're only like 2%, which is really good. But then my last question is, what do you find that people throw in recycling that you cannot recycle? What drives you insane that gets in there? So like clothes, what is it?
So we get a mixture of odd objects that obviously don't belong in the community. So we get your Air Force Ones, we get tennis shoes, we get clothing, we just get odd things that people recycle. So a lot of times it's a lot of textiles, we partnered with Heavy Metal, which is a local company, and when we saw that we got a lot of ferocious metals, for example, aluminum blocks, and we get cast iron, etc. We always find an outlet for that. We always trying to find an outlet for everything coming in, whether it's something that we really like and that we make a profit out of and give back and pay our employees, or yet something that just comes in. We don't want to send nothing to landfill. We go ahead and find outlets for those. So yeah, we do get odd objects in, but we always try to find an outlet if there's one available. If not, then unfortunately it goes to our land.
I have a question for you, kind of a play off of the plastics. So how do some of these companies like Coca-Cola saying that they want to recycle and have partially recycled bottles back into their stream, how is that affecting the economics that you see? I mean, are there enough companies that are starting to do this, that it's helping to increase the price of those plastics, or are they really not making that effort that they say they're making?
So my experience is that Coca-Cola, for example, they hire third-party consulting essentially to go to large large buying facilities. Like, so the University of Notre Dame is an example, and like someone is assigned to the University of Notre Dame specifically to track how many plastic bottles are being recycled through Notre Dame relative to how many plastic bottles they're buying. And from my perspective, again, like I'm no expert on this, so I'm just giving you my experiences. What they're trying to do, in my opinion, is they're going to high volume hubs for plastics in and out, and they're trying to balance the scales and say, okay, we've shipped in this many, we recovered this many, now we need to go buy the balance in recyclable plastics in order to say that we are, our tons of plastic out is equaling our tons of plastic in. Now, that's what I see from the effort in terms of it improving the value of plastics. My humble opinion is like those plastics, it's the same buyers, like the same, whether they were, I don't think they're buying more. I think the biggest driver, honestly, is just oil prices. That's what I believe is the biggest driver of the value of plastics is virgin oil, petroleum, virgin option, which is the alternative to the recycle option.
I had one more question. So I read an article that talked about Indianapolis being the hottest market that's not being utilized for recycling in the nation because they don't have curbside recycling. They could. They don't have a huge amount of participation, really low participation rates, even for who is recycling. So when you look at our area, we don't really see who's recycling and who isn't necessarily from our vantage view. What are those markets in our area that aren't recycling that are really untapped potential?
Okay, long answer to this question is we live in a historically conservative geographic area. We also live in an area where the balance between the cost to recycle and the cost to dispose is actually way closer than most other places in the country. Quick example is like in Boston, you're going to pay $100 a ton to put something in the landfill. Here, you're going to pay like $33 to put something in the landfill. So you see where, the benefit of recycling isn't quite as good. So for the business, for example, if they're not told they have to recycle, there's a lot of times where just the labor to get it into a different container or the floor space that it takes up for an extra hopper, it is not worth the effort. So we've got this uphill battle. So that ties into the answer to your question, which is I would say recycling is strong in Elkhart County from a residential standpoint. I think that we really do have a strong subscription residential base of people who opt in just on their own to pay for recycling because they believe in it. But if you compare that to our neighboring county, St. Joe County, as an example, St. Joe County has curbside recycling at every single home provided by the county. So just picture the difference there. Like in Elkhart County, in many cities, and like in Goshen is looking to implement curbside recycling by the leadership that's here today. But historically, like many communities in Elkhart County, they say, well, if you want recycling, go get it. And so we don't generate as many recycled tons as our neighboring municipalities. Does that answer your question?
Yes, actually, it gave me even more than I had really thought to, so, thanks.
You're welcome.
I was wondering about certain products that say that they're recyclable, and it seems like they have layers and layers of different material. Like they might have like a waxy outer, and then like cardboard, and then maybe like an aluminum film on the inside of these like juice like containers, or yeah. How can those really be recycled, or is there an outlet for those?
And there is, and I know exactly what you're referring to. A lot of what gentleman he's referring to is like the food industry based containers that they use to really put in your takeout, etc. A lot of that stuff does have what's called almost like a microman's coating, waxing coating on the outside to prevent any moisture from going in, to keep the food or something from spoiling. And yeah, while it is difficult to really find a market for those materials, there is a very niche market out there that does purchase that material. So yes, I know that a friend of mine, Logan Miller, he used to be a plant manager, my predecessor. He's over at Rumpke, and Rumpke has now specialized and taken in a lot of that material that comes from the restaurant industry that is quite difficult to find markets towards. So yeah, but it does take some infrastructure to really get the right equipment, machinery, right outlets for it.
But it's Liam, right? Yeah. Liam, I think so. Your question was pretty broad, and I want to be clear though for everyone here, because we don't want to send mixed messaging, that like there are many recyclables that have multiple layers, which aren't recycling. So we can't give you a blanket answer to this question.
As one example.
Yeah.
I've seen lots of other products. Don't seem to me as recyclable, or it's a little sign on it. Like some grocery bags will have like a little
Recycling sign on it.
Quick, like funny notice, it's hard in our business where a business comes to me and says, is this recyclable? And I'm like, okay, everything's recyclable, but we can't recycle that. Like clothes are recyclable, but I'm not going to take clothes unless you give me 20 bales of, some RV furniture manufacturer may have 20 bales of this faux leather. I might be able to find a home for that. That's different than the resident who says, I've got these faux leather shoes. Can I take these to you? No, I can't take those. But it gets you caught up because one person will say, you told me it wasn't recyclable, and you told me it was recyclable. It's like, it's really hard to answer the question. But in general, though, it does make it very difficult. Your question is intuitive because it makes it very difficult when there's multiple layers to recycle something.
You were mentioning something about how I guess in Elkhart County there's a lot of residential interests that are like going through research. But what about actual businesses like I guess the RV industry, potential there? Like how engaged are you guys with those residential projects like here? You mentioned something about like scrap materials like scrap wood. Like how engaged are you guys with those businesses?
We are very, I mean, that's what we specialize in. What I find is that economics really drives the decision making. However, that's been the history, right? Like if it's not less expensive, for the most part, that's not an all-inclusive answer. I'm just saying 8 out of 10 times, if it's not cheaper, the customer's probably gonna say, no, I'm not gonna pay more to recycle. But what I'm finding is, now that you've got a lot of consolidation in the RV industry and their supplier base to these big publicly traded companies, they have their corporate governance that's requiring them to be more diligent about tracking their recycling and being environmental stewards. And so all of a sudden, we're getting a lot more questions. Well, can you give me this recycling report? Can you give me that recycling report? So I guess my point is, it's just interesting. I'm seeing a shift as we speak where there's a lot more involvement and a lot more tracking of recycling.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to have to.
Yeah, the SEC it's not necessarily a direct impact to recycle necessarily, but it probably will like some.
And that wouldn't have been the case in the past. So like in the past, you had a lot less consolidation in all these independent businesses that weren't governed by the SEC necessarily, or they weren't. And yeah, so it's different now.
Yes.
Is single stream worth it? Like if we had if you had the option for single stream or pre-sorted, is single stream worth it?
Single stream is worth it. Single stream is just, single stream is a lot more efficient. It's a lot easier for the daily resident consumer to just, instead of separating it, it saves time and it allows us to do the separation and processing of the material. I know back then I remember going to my elementary school and seeing blue bins inside of the classroom, one for paper, one for bottles, etc. However, once again, you had individuals putting the wrong item in the wrong bin. So single stream is a lot better in our industry. Just everything that is considered recyclable, which is your corrugated, your cardboard, glass, plastic bottles, your tin, aluminum, paper, news, throw that in together and let us take care of the rest.
And that's largely because you're increasing participation because it's easier for people, so you have more input. And if it's pre-sorted, you still end up sorting it again anyway. So the labor is already there. Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. And technology has come a long way where there's a lot of assistance and technological advances that allows us to separate material at a faster rate, allowing us to obviously increase capacity and volume. So single stream definitely is the way to go. It is the new norm now.
Fast fun fact for you on that. So I just love these things. I'm sorry if they're annoying or dirty, but like a Prius weighs about 1.5 tons. Daniel's facilities are able to move 12.5 Priuses in weight by weight through his facilities per hour. 12.5 Priuses per hour, 4,200 Priuses a month by weight through the facility. You can't do that. Number one, we wouldn't get that participation with source separated, but then you can't do that without being single stream. Right.
Yes.
You said that the 3 through 7 plastics are being sent to Chicago area?
No. So 3 through 7s are being sent. So right now they are the harder to find homes to plastics, harder to recycle. So currently we back in the fall of 2021, our facility partnered with Brightmark, which is a new operation opening up in Ashley, like Kyle mentioned. They are going to be extracting fuel out of those hard to recycle plastics. So
that was not under the advanced recycling. Breaking it down for biofuel?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They're pelletizing it and then refining
And
it.
then refining it, yeah. So pelletizing material and then extracting your fuel.
I'm guessing you're probably familiar with the not terribly complimentary article that lawyers put out. They did put out something recently talking about this. I'm just wondering, at what point does advanced recycling actually, how much of it is it in a startup phase? How many years before that actually becomes a more mainstream form of recycling? I realize that sounds like you guys do, but I'm curious. It seems like in the early stages of development still, on a number of levels, how much you can get out of it, because one of the things that the article mentioned was that if certain plastics are too dirty, they're not able to use them. So it sounds like, well, I'm curious what the efficiency is and how much of it is them still trying to get money investors into it to push this form of recycling forward.
I can speak to my experience only. I'm no expert. I've toured their facility. I've read articles about the $800 million that's been invested in RES Polyflow, which turned into Brightmark Energy. And also being a customer, I guess you could say, or a supplier to Brightmark, we've experienced years of delays in this process. Have I ever been told that it's because the plastics have been too dirty? No. But I'm in the business where when I hear someone come along and say, throw your toothbrushes in, throw your You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a catch-all for all these things that once were difficult to recycle. It sounds to me too good to be true. And I think that's maybe what they're running into, is like, you can't take this random mix of stuff, throw it in and turn it into fuel. You have to be a little more selective. That's probably what's slowing them up. And you might be right. Maybe this Reuters article that I haven't read, but maybe it's true.
Yeah, but it sounds like the process itself is now maybe developed in about 6 years maybe. Is that what?
How long has it been in development?
Yeah, how long have they been, how recently have they been into development?
It's been based on the leader of development for Brightmark. It has been relatively new in terms of at least pelletizing and extracting fuel out of those 337 hard to recycle plastics. But once again, to answer your question, it all comes down to just funding. You know, a traditional Murph taking single string, it's a lot more attractive. It creates jobs. It's a lot more applicable to a local community than it is to open a futuristic and more of a future, you know, recyclable facility like you mentioned, like Brightmark. Takes a lot more capital expenditure, takes a lot more investors to buy into it, and it is a very costly process. Yeah, I cannot tell you that.
That's not the indication we get now, but we've been delayed many times. So I don't know. We certainly hope it's not 5 years. We would bunker a lot of 337s in 5 years. We're currently bunkering it. I mean, they're paying us to store it, so they're serious about taking it. Yeah, we're not just tossing it. Now, again, like we picture us, we're like a material handler. We're in the middle. We don't take this thing to its final commodity. So it's out of our control. Go ahead.
I do have one last question. It's kind of odd, but you may already know the answer. But when I drive by the landfill and I see the flame that landfill is producing, breaking down the materials that's been buried, is there any way that you're already doing it that can be turned into some kind of energy?
So it is this is where I hope I'm not wrong. I believe I know what I'm talking about here. We don't own the landfill, so I'm fairly confident the answer to your question is that's the excess gas, meaning it's powering, so it's powering generators. Yeah, but the excess, when those generators have too much gas coming in and they say it's gotta go somewhere else. Right, maybe so, yeah. And it might even not be called a generator. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be ignorant. It's just that's in general what happens.
I was curious if you could speak into like the job satisfaction, either sorting workers or anything like that.
Yeah, so once again, it takes a very dedicated, very special group of individuals to come and work in a Murph at a recycling facility. So I am proud to say that 99% of my team is of Hispanic descent, are Latinos. There is a large Latino population in our community. That's why, you know, these are hard individuals that, you know, based on the talks I've had with them as plant manager is, you know, back in their native country of Mexico, Honduras, Salvador, Brazil, wherever it is, they don't have these recycling facilities even available or even recycling service available. So they see, a lot of them are talking about stepping outside their homes in their native country and seeing a landfill right next door in an empty soccer field. So once again, the job satisfaction is the wages are very competitive to other wages locally. We encourage them to go out, get education. So we provide continuing education paid for by the company. We provide traditional 401k match. We have a clinic that is paid for by the company that is free for all our employees to go in and receive basic treatment, medical treatment. So anything that doesn't require any type of specialized medical doctor, they can go to our clinic and they can be seen free of charge.
So if you want to get hands-on, if you need summer work.
Yes.
I think we had one more question, then we probably
Yep.
wrap
And
it up.
How much of your stream comes from the bins, like the bins that residents drive up to and toss stuff in, like we have just that direction from this building, what percentage into your facility comes out of those bins, you know?
Well, that's a good question.
It is a very
Tough
good
question.
question.
I can take a stab at it. Yeah. 10%. If that, I'm going to say 10% is probably on the high end.
There's one thing that I think you could really make a priority of, especially with spring and Earth Day arriving soon, and, you know, people are out and about, and they see litter, it's left from the winter, and, you know, it's just a time that people are thinking in terms of Mother Earth and being kind to Earth, and how recycling fits into that. I think it could be important that you spend some time educating the public as to what is appropriate materials to be putting in these bins when they drive up and unload. There's room for education, because when I drive up to them and unload mine, I see items there that shouldn't have been left in those bins, and some people will do that regardless of education about the matter. But I think there's also room to educate so that people are aware and people know that certain items do have value for recycling in a recycling market. There's just always room for more public education, whether it's through local newspapers, which old people like me read.
But you also read the container. The funny thing about that,
Yeah.
is the same person who would read that in the newspaper
Yeah,
cares enough that when they saw the container, they would see directly on the front of the container, it says what to put in and what not to put in the container.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like,
but through social media, perhaps with a lot of younger people, there's room for education.
And I believe,
And that's a never-ending task, I'm sure, but I encourage your efforts in that.
of course, and I think Teresa's done a great job with the city. I mean, they have started an initiative series called the Zero Waste for Goshen, and bringing speakers from all sorts of industry all related to the waste. For example, I talked was it last year already?
And no, it was just in the fall.
It was back in the
I know,
fall.
it was
We are in the fall. So yeah, there are efforts being made to speak and provide information. That's why today we have some props for you guys to take with you guys. It is very simple. This first one that you'll see up here, this Recycling 101. It was a pamphlet that's made, and literally it breaks down to the do's and don'ts, and also some fun facts about recycling and how your material coming in affects its big picture as a whole.
So just to add a little thing on the public education is really tough, because if you're doing the business, it's really hard. You're adding expenses when you're doing public education. So you're still walking that fine line between having more workers and paying to do public education versus the person or entity who contracts, where they're doing the work, but the contractor for those drop-off bins is the county. The county has some responsibility also to be doing that public education and to be paying for that public education. So it doesn't just fall on the recycler. It really needs to be a big umbrella, and all the players need to participate. And that's something that I remember as a kid. It was on television all the time when I was a kid, in commercials. Recycling was a really big deal, and then it just kind of fell off the earth. I mean, people were still doing it, especially if you were in that demographic where you grew up with it or you had it in school, but then there wasn't really as much, at least in Indiana, talking about recycling. And we just don't have that government push like we used to when it was the 1970s and 80s, where the big landfill crisis, we were all going to fill up the landfills and we were going to be in real trouble. And so there was a big public education push, and you just don't have that from the top anymore. And that's a huge problem. So,
Big challenge. There are, to add, there's every ton that goes into our county landfill that's owned by our county government, $2.10 is a fee that goes directly to the, well, it used to be the solid waste management district, which was disbanded, but my point is, out of that 210, there's a fraction of that that's dedicated to educating on recycling. So, if you know, I'm just saying, those are just facts.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Thank you everybody. Be sure to grab a recycled fiber pen. I like those.